The good news for March 21, 2022. The first reading is taken from 2 Kings. Naaman, the commander of the Syrian army, was highly respected and esteemed by the king of Syria because, through Naaman, the Lord had given victory to the Syrian forces. He was a great soldier, but he suffered from a dreaded skin disease. In one of their raids against Israel, the Syrians had carried off a little Israelite girl, who became a servant of Naaman's wife. One day, she said to her mistress, "I wish that my master could go to the prophet, who lives in Samaria. He would cure his disease." When Naaman heard of this, he went to the king, and told him what the girl had said. The king said, "Go to the king of Israel, and take this letter to him." So, Naaman set out, taking 30,000 pieces of silver, 6,000 pieces of gold, and 6 changes of fine clothes. The letter that he took read, "This letter will introduce my officer Naaman. I want you to cure him of his disease." When the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes in dismay, and exclaimed, "How can the king of Syria expect me to cure this man? Does he think I'm God, with the power of life and death?" It explains that he's trying to start a quarrel with me. When the prophet Elisha heard what happened, he sent word to the king, "Why are you so upset? Send the man to me, and I'll show him that there is a prophet in Israel." So, Naaman went with his horses and chariots, and stopped at the entrance to Elisha's house. Elisha sent a servant out, to tell him to wash himself 7 times in the Jordan River, and he would be cured of his disease. But Naaman left in a rage, saying, "I thought that he would at least come out to me, pray to the Lord, his God, wave his hand over the diseased spot, and cure me. Besides, aren't the rivers in Abana and Pharpar, back in Damascus, better than any river in Israel? I could have washed in them, and been cured." His servants went up to him, and said, "Sir, if the prophet had told you to do something difficult, you would have done it. Now, why can't you just wash yourself, as he said, and be cured?" So, Naaman went down to the Jordan, dipped himself in it 7 times, as Elisha had instructed, and he was completely cured. His flesh became firm and healthy, like that of a child. He returned to Elisha with all his men, and said, "Now, I know that there is no God but the God of Israel, so please, sir, accept a gift from me." The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Psalms of the Day, Psalms 42. Athirst is my soul, for the living God. When shall I go, and behold the face of God? As the hind longs for the running waters, so my soul longs for you, O God. Athirst is my soul, for the living God. When shall I go, and behold the face of God? Athirst is my soul for God, the living God. When shall I go, and behold the face of God? Athirst is my soul, for the living God. When shall I go, and behold the face of God? Send forth your light and your fidelity, they shall lead me on, and bring me to your holy mountain, to your dwelling place. Athirst is my soul, for the living God. When shall I go, and behold the face of God? Then will I go into the altar of God, the God of my gladness and joy. Then will I give you thanks, upon the harp, O God, my God. Athirst is my soul, for the living God. When shall I go, and behold the face of God.
I hope in the Lord, I trust in His word. With Him, there is kindness, and plenteous redemption.
The Gospel of the Day, according to Luke. Glory to you, Lord Jesus Christ. I tell you this, Jesus added, a prophet is not welcomed in his hometown. Listen to this. It is true, that there were many widows in Israel, during the time of Elijah, when there was no rain for 3.5 years, and a severe famine spread throughout the whole land. Yet, Elijah was not sent to anyone in Israel, but only to a widow living in Zarephath, in the territory of Sidon. And there were many people suffering from dreaded skin disease, who lived in Israel, during the time of the prophet Elisha, yet none of them was healed, only Naaman, the Syrian. When the people in the synagogue heard this, they were filled with anger. They rose up, dragged Jesus out of town, and took him to the top of the hill, on which their town was built. They meant to throw him over the cliff, but he walked through the middle of the crowd, and went his way. Good news of our salvation. Praise be to God.